Here's something that sounds like a mistake, but isn't. Ride without a helmet in one Indian state, and the fine could be 100 rupees. Cross into most other states, doing the exact same thing, and it can legally cost you 10 times more. Same country, same law, different bill. We'll get into exactly how wide that gap gets in the next episode. But that gap only exists because of a decision made in 1950 in a room full of people who had just watched the country nearly come apart and had to decide from scratch how much power to hand to the states and how much to keep at the center. That decision has a name. It's called federalism, and almost nobody who benefits from it or gets confused by it actually knows how it works. Federalism just means this: power is split between one national government and several regional ones. And this part matters. Both of them govern you directly at the same time. That's different from a unitary system, where all power sits with one central government and regions just carry out its orders. And it's different from a confederation, where the regional units are actually supreme and the center exists only because they allow it to. India calls itself neither a federation nor a confederation. Look at Article 1 of the Constitution. It says India is a union of states, not a federation. That word was chosen deliberately, and the reason why is the whole story. Why union, not federation? Rewind to 1949. The Constituent Assembly wasn't designing a government for a stable, settled country. Partition had just happened. Well over 500 princely states, each with its own ruler, some the size of small countries, were being persuaded, pressured, or absorbed into a single union. The fear in that room wasn't abstract. It was that India could fracture the same way it had just been partitioned. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, chairing the drafting committee, chose the word union specifically because a federation, in the classical sense, is something independent states voluntarily join and can therefore, in principle, leave. A union of states in India's constitution is not the result of an agreement between the states. It exists first, and the states exist within it. Ambedkar summed up the entire design philosophy in one line during the assembly debates. The Constitution, he said, would be both unitary as well as federal according to the requirements of time and circumstances. That single sentence is the blueprint for almost everything that follows. The unitary features hiding inside a federal structure. On paper, India divides power the way most federations do: a union list, a state list, and the concurrent list we covered last episode. But built into that same structure are several features that quietly tilt the whole system toward the center. Residuary powers, anything not explicitly listed anywhere, belong to Parliament, not the states. Citizenship is single and uniform. There's no separate state citizenship the way there is in some federations. The judiciary is integrated into one single hierarchy topped by the Supreme Court, rather than states running their own parallel court systems. Parliament can alter a state's boundaries or even its existence without that state's consent under Article 3. And under Articles 352 and 356, the Constitution allows the President to declare an emergency that can, temporarily, convert the entire federal structure into something close to unitary rule. None of this was hidden or accidental. It's why constitutional scholar K.C. Ware, comparing constitutions across the world, called India's system quasi-federal, federal in form, with a built-in bias toward central control when it's needed. What America chose differently, and why the United States solved this same problem by starting from the opposite direction. 13 former colonies, each already functioning as its own sovereign state, voluntarily agreed to pool some of their power into a shared federal government, while explicitly keeping whatever they didn't hand over. The US Constitution's 10th Amendment states this outright. Powers not delegated to the federal government remain with the states or with the people. That single design choice ripples through everything else. American states run their own separate court systems alongside the federal one. They write their own state constitutions. Citizens hold both federal and state citizenship simultaneously. The starting assumption is that power belongs to the states unless it's been specifically handed upward. The honest limitation: this only works because of how the US was built. 13 already sovereign entities merging upward. India's situation in 1950 was the reverse. One entity, newly formed out of partition and princely state integration, needed to hold together first and distribute power outward second, carefully, and with an emergency lever kept firmly in reach. You can't transplant a coming together federation's assumptions onto a country that was explicitly built to prevent coming apart. India. Specific. What's already working? The story doesn't end with a constitution tilted toward the center in 1950. It's genuinely moved since then. In 1994, the Supreme Court's judgment in S.R. Bommai versus Union of India held that federalism is part of the Constitution's basic structure, the core that can't simply be legislated away, and placed real limits on the center's ability to dismiss state governments under Article 356, a power that had been used far more loosely before that ruling. And the GST Council, the body that decides India's goods and services tax rates, is a working example of exactly the kind of cooperative federalism Ambedkar gestured toward. Every state finance minister sits at the same table as the centers, and tax decisions genuinely require their agreement, not just their notification. The gap isn't that India is stuck with a 1950 blueprint. It's that most citizens still think of federalism as a finished, static fact, a chart of powers, rather than a relationship between center and states that keeps being renegotiated in courtrooms and council meetings every single year. So, that helmet fine we opened with, 100 rupees in one state, 10 times that a few states over. Now you know why that's legal and not a loophole. It's what a union of states, built the way India's was always going to produce. We, the people,